Hello everyone, it's Phoebe. I hope you're all doing okay and have had a great weekend. Before I start this video, I just wanted to let you know that I'm not doing it because this is a hate channel. This has got nothing to do with being hateful. I don't want to be nasty or horrible about anybody or towards anybody. This is all about getting the truth out there, and if something is incorrect, if it's a mistake or a conspiracy theory, if, for whatever reason, it needs to be put right, in my opinion. So that's all I'm doing. I'm putting something right. If you haven't seen AD's video entitled Chris Watt's Secret Trip to His Hidden Truck, it might be helpful if you go and have a look at that first. And I know that some of you will say, oh, but Phoebes, you're giving him extra views. Well, again, this isn't about channel versus channel. I don't mind, he can get extra views for all I care. This is all about putting what he has said as his theory, or what he thinks he's done, putting it right, because I believe he is wrong. Okay, so basically what I want to go through are a few things. One thing is that he states that Chris Watts has been driving around in Shanann's car throughout the day on Tuesday. That's not true. Also that he states he's caught Chris Watts walking away from Shanann's car after he's taken it on a little trip somewhere. That's not true. And I also have a couple of issues with his sort of overall theory of the timeline of what happened. So let's get stuck in. He starts off telling us that he's going to tell us all about the white car today, as opposed to the grey car, you know, the grey truck or the red car. And he shows us some photos from Nate's CCTV of a white car or SUV, as he calls it, although he does call it a vehicle on one occasion, I believe. So have a little look and see what you think, because this to me doesn't look like a car or an SUV. It looks like what we would call here in the UK a transit van. What do you think? Look at the triangular windows. It definitely isn't a car. It's not an SUV in my opinion. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to say in my opinion. Then he goes on to show a clip of a video of a white vehicle, a white car, driving in the background of a police officer's body cam footage. And he's wondering, what is that car? Whose is that car? Who's driving it? Well, the timestamp on the body cam footage then is 17:53. And as we know from my previous video, all the timestamps are out by 6 hours. So in reality, it wasn't 17:53, it was actually 11:53. So where was Chris Watts at 17:53 on the body cam footage timestamp? Where was he? Let's have a look. So here's Chris Watts standing next to Officer Ivan Perez, talking to Officer Lines, I believe it is, whilst they're conducting, or just about to conduct, the canine dog search of his house. So it definitely wasn't Chris Watts driving that white car that he says is circling round like a red Indian. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. I've never heard that phrase before. He also wonders whether that car is the white car from the sand dune trip. He speculates there. So maybe he thinks it's NK driving that vehicle. Who knows? But it definitely wasn't Chris Watts. Okay, so then he moves on and he tells us how Shanann's car is parked out in the road, and that he has caught Chris Watts walking away from the white car, Shanann's white car, because Chris has taken it on a little trip somewhere. Now the discovery does tell us that at 12:28 a white vehicle, white car, does drive off and returns 10 minutes later at 12:39. So I'm guessing that this is the little drive that he's referring to. He doesn't give us any time scale, so it's a little bit confusing, to be honest. So let's have a look, because I don't think Chris Watts is seen walking away from Shanann's car at all. This is Chris Watts. It's definitely him, very close to a white car. But see what you think. I think he's coming from different angles from where those two pathways are that I've shown you with my very badly drawn red and blue squiggly lines. But he definitely isn't walking away from Shanann's car, having just driven it somewhere. I hope you agree with me. I think it's pretty obvious, really. If you look at the way his body's facing, he's walking back up to his house. And also, I don't believe that that is even Shanann's car, and I'll show you why later. AD then starts reading from the discovery about how the garage door opens and Chris Watts is seen in the garage loading stuff into Shanann's white Lexus, and he thinks that it possibly could be some blankets or something, and then the garage door closes. And then it reopens again at 15:17, and then it says end of log, which it is the end of the log, but it's definitely not the end of the discovery. There's lots more discovery elsewhere, because the surveillance has been going on from 10 o'clock that morning, and it continues throughout until Chris Watts departs from the police station at 11 o'clock that night. So AD says, we have to deduce from that what's happened. Well, no, we don't have to deduce anything, because it's all there. If you put the discovery and the body cam footage together, you can see exactly what's happened. So AD is convinced that it's Shanann's car out in the road, because he says things like, I've got a photo of it at 5 o'clock and we've seen it on the body cam footage at 17:20. Well, we all know that that's really 11:20. And he summarises by saying that the car's out on the road, but Chris Watts takes it back into the garage to load it up with stuff by putting it in the boot, possibly blankets. Or he didn't take it back into the garage because it was never out on the road. I'll show you again in a moment. AD says, we know that he took it back into the garage because I've caught him walking away from the car. Well, I think I've shown that Chris Watts wasn't walking away from her car. So he's loaded stuff in the car, AD says, and he's gone off and dumped it. This is how I piece it together. He's put it in the garage, and he puts personal stuff in the boot. Some of it sounded like children's blankets and stuff. And this bit's important, guys. He, Chris Watts, then parks out the front and drives off at 6:30. And he was followed by the police surveillance cars, which he was, several. He stops off at a brown Ford pickup truck, transfers incriminating evidence into the pickup truck, and makes his way to the police station in Shanann's car for the police interview. I'm not disputing that Chris Watts got rid of evidence, I'm sure he did. AD questions why he would take the stuff out and put it in the truck and then go to the police station. Well, that wasn't Chris Watts' initial plan either. So he says, that's what I can tell you about the white car. It was him driving it. It was him, Christopher Lee Watts, seen driving around in Shanann's car on the Tuesday. And then he says, and we do know that Chris Watts was never released again. That visit to the police station was ending. So what did the police find in the truck when they eventually found it? What was in those bags? Well, he's got the wrong day, because AD is talking about Tuesday the 14th, and Chris Watts was arrested on Wednesday the 15th. Okay, so that was a huge, huge boo-boo. So let's have a look and see what I think really happened. Was this Shanann's car parked in the road that he thinks he caught Chris Watts walking away from? Let's have a look.
Saturday, they were soaking wet. They were like, cause Celeste, Cece, she was just like she was in the water. and they both are soaking wet.
You said you can't really remember which nightgown they were wearing that night?
Not that so many. It's so many.
Yeah, especially that age, they like to get them dirty really, really fast.
They got the dogs in there, so you can go in. You can go in, but
So as you can see, Nick and Amanda Thayer drove up. They spent the whole day. They arrived at 9 o'clock and spent the whole day with Chris. And if you notice the dustbin where they park, it's right in front of the car, right in front of their car. And if we have a look back to the photo that AD uses where he thinks he's caught Chris Watts getting out of Shanann's car, guess what's parked in front of the car? A white dustbin, a blue dustbin. So it's not Shanann's car parked in the road that day. And Chris Watts does not take it out of the garage at 5:20 and drive off at 6:30. Because if you read the discovery, it says that MPO Justin Ownby saw Chris Watts backing out of the garage at 6:30. In another clip from the discovery, Chris Watts is seen exiting the garage and driving off at 6:30. So he definitely didn't park the car out on the road and drive off. It was in the garage all afternoon. He wasn't driving around in the car. I don't think, to be honest, that he had time. We're going to have a look at the whole timeline of the whole day in a moment. And what actually happened was, yeah, he did set off at 6:30, took the car out of the garage. Then he received a call from Frederick Police, which he didn't take, so he rang them back. He'd already spoken or texted Nick Thayer because they'd agreed earlier on in the day that Chris would go and stay the night with the Thayers. So Chris tells Nick Thayer at 6:26 that he's leaving home and has to stop off for petrol on the way. And he returns the call to Frederick Police, and then at 6:40 he calls Nick Thayer to tell him, you know, I can't come to you because I've been called by the police and they want me to go in for an interview. So that's what happened. Chris never drove off knowing that he was going to the police. He drove off thinking that he was going to go to Amanda and Nick's house. He definitely did dump stuff off at the truck on the way there. I'm not disputing that whatsoever. I hope I've explained this properly. Let's just have a look at the timeline. can see there was no mention of Christopher Lee Watts getting into any vehicles or leaving his house. You know, he was pretty busy that day too, wasn't he, with all the press interviews and the cadaver dogs, and you know, Amanda and Nick were there with him all day. Now, I am not a Chris Watts supporter. I am 100% Team Rusek. I have supported Shanann Rusek, Frankie, Sandy, and Mr. Frank Rusek from day one. I always have. I'm not defending Chris Watts in any way, shape, or form. I'm just doing what I think is right by putting something straight, or a few things straight, from that video that AD made. Okay. So just to finish off, I want to give my love to all of you guys. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, you know, not a day goes by that I don't think about Shanann, Bella, Cece and Nico and Sandy, Frank and Frankie. My love goes out to you guys so much. You're in my prayers, you're in my thoughts, and I'm sending you lots and lots of love, hugs, prayers, support, everything I can think of. I'm sending it to you. Okay guys, so I'm going to close there now. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I appreciate it more than you will ever know. Believe you me, I really do. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye bye.